Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations, and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have a different type of guest. Her name is Lynne Chamberlain, and she is the Vice President of Business Development at Redhat. Redhat is a major company, about $3 billion company, and recently is acquired by IBM. She is a very successful woman, has climbed a lot of ladders in her career as a woman when it was man's world. Ms. Chamberlain, thank you so much for coming here. Really appreciate you taking a flight to record our show. Really appreciate it.
Well, Raj, I appreciate being here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
No problem, no problem. And we want to learn something from you about what you do and what you work on and what is the future and certain few more things. So
okay, sounds good.
So normally, first we introduce our guest normally on our program because we have many different guests and they come from many different places. So we want to talk about you first. So let's talk about you and who you are and what you do and how did you get here where you are today.
Okay. So I grew up as a military brat. My dad was in the service, so I traveled a lot of different places.
Okay.
And when he had passed away very young, I went to school on the GI Bill. And one of the ways I'm going to school on GI Bill, when I went to graduate school, they paid for my graduate school, and one of the things I had to do in school was to audit a small business.
Okay.
And when I audited this small business, it happened to be a restaurant. And we found out people were constantly making errors on their guest checks. That was manual at the time, and they handed you a guest check, and there was always an error on it, or majority of the time.
Right.
So they called me in and said, "How can you fix that?" And we looked at cash registers. So hence my start in computer technology was installing cash registers. And I did it in that company, and so they offered me a job, NCR, right out of graduate school, and I had the fortunate opportunity to sell all to the officers' clubs worldwide, and I put in the cash registers, and it was a little bit technology you had to learn, but also back office, inventory control systems, and so I covered all that. So that got my start in the IT side.
Okay.
And from there, I went to work for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation.
Oh, DEC.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you for knowing it, because people don't even know that name anymore, right? It's amazing how that used to be one of the big companies in the industry.
Absolutely.
And you talk to these millennials and they go, DEC, digital. They never heard of it.
They never heard of it.
No, and it got purchased by Compaq.
Right.
And then Compaq got purchased by HP.
Right.
So it's now HP. So I worked there for a number of years doing IT, the big VAX 7000s, and
I remember all those
VMS.
things. I remember VMS. Yeah.
And VMS got taken over by really Unix. Unix, and the Sun kind of drove that out of the space. So after that, I went to work for a company called Network Appliance Technology. I had started after that with Silicon Graphics. And so I worked with the big Cray computers. So I learned big technology.
Cray.
And SGI did the acquisition of Cray.
Right.
And I got the opportunity to meet Seymour Cray, which was an amazing man in the industry. And after SGI, so I got to learn high-end mainframe computers. I went to Network Appliance. So it's interesting going there, because when I went to Network Appliance, it was network attached storage. And the routers and the network at the time were not stable. And so people, why would you go to a network attached storage or a NetApp? Because the networks aren't stable. Well, over the years, it became very stable, and NetApp then competed against EMC and did really well. So we saw that change. So the industry changed with storage. It got smaller, and I enjoyed that. I did that for about 6 years. I went to Unisys afterwards, selling mainframes. I was VP of their major organization called System and Technology, all government, and we sold all the mainframes to DISA and the big accounts. The nice thing about that is I got into project management, programs, a lot of different software. And even though Unisys was kind of an elephant in the room, it still had great technology on the high end, high performance computing area. After that, it was funny. At the time, they were all into Microsoft at Unisys.
Right,
and,
right. Yeah.
And you saw what happened with Unix, and Unix, then all of a sudden Linux kind of sprouted at the time. And I thought, Linux is the direction of the industry. I just felt that at the time, and this has been about 18 years ago. So I called in the director, the vice president of worldwide sales into Unisys, because I was a VP running a big $500 million organization. And I called him in.
At Unisys?
At Unisys.
Oh, okay.
So I run a large organization there.
Okay.
And about 500, 600 people we had in my group.
Wow.
And so I called him in and said, we're using Microsoft, but I'd really like to talk to you about Red Hat, open source. And so we talked. As soon as he left the room, he called me up on the phone and he said, Lynn, why don't you come work for me? He said,
Oh, so you were talking to Red Hat person?
Yeah, I was talking to a Red Hat person just about how I wanted to start moving to Linux with our mainframes and our technology. And when he came in, he goes, you know all about this Linux. I said, I think the Linux is the direction of the future.
Right.
And so he called me and invited me in, and he said, come work for me. So Alex Pinchif, his name was, he was vice president of worldwide sales. So Alex, and so I started there, and that's been 15 years ago.
Wow.
So when I went to Red Hat, so we can talk a little bit about Red Hat, I guess. So that kind of was my career, and I got to meet a lot of different people throughout my career. When I went to Digital Deck that you brought, and we didn't have phones, and we didn't have, you couldn't go on a web and find out who people were. They brought in this woman who was an admiral in the Navy, and they asked me, can you take her around? She has this nanosecond, which was like a 12-inch wire, and she always said, this is a nanosecond. Could you take her around and help us? She's going to do BD for us at DEC. You know who it was?
Who?
Admiral Grace Hopper.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't know who she was, do you know what I mean? She came out of the Navy, and I said, sure. So I took her around to a lot of different customers, and she was promoting digital, but also promoting her nanosecond. And it wasn't until years later did I realize who was amongst my myths, and and it was just amazing. So between Seymour Cray and Grace Hopper, I've been very blessed over the years, not only being with great technology companies, and being the first women in a lot of these technology companies.
I think so. That time, there were like hard women was not there.
Oh, when I went to work at some of these companies, there was no women. I was the first woman that ever sold for them. But it got a lot of exposure, and I started a lot of women's groups inside these companies as we tried to bring in women and recruit women. It was very difficult because a lot of women weren't in IT. Now you've got the whole STEM capability now, and a lot of women are in that. And I know even with Red Hat, we have quite a few women in our organization, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, so it's been a great journey.
Very interesting. Like, Cray, remember that, that was the only supercomputer available at that time.
It was. SGI had their mainframe supercomputer. But, and it was struggling because one of the things you sold to high performance computing into the DoD and into the big agencies, intelligence community. But unfortunately, what happened for Cray is you were building one-offs. It wasn't a mass production of hardware. It was building one major Cray computer. So they spent a lot of money doing that, and that was the unfortunate part. You couldn't really recoup it. You couldn't repeat it with another project.
That's why they were not that successful, I think. But that technology was great, actually. I mean, I didn't work on. I worked for Unisys. But I did not work on Cray, but we know it. They are in the Minneapolis area also, right?
They're in Minneapolis,
in that area also, right? So I was in Unisys at Minneapolis, and I knew that that area.
So, and if you think of all these technology companies, Silicon Graphics, the same thing when I worked for them. High-end graphics, high-end machines, very costly, and then you had the chip come out from NVIDIA. And when we were doing a lot of stuff with the media and stuff that was in California, those chips were great from NVIDIA, but it really brought the cost down. Same thing for SGI. It was very hard to compete.
Right, right,
You know?
right.
Same thing with network appliance. You see the struggle now with them, right? I
Right,
mean, the
yeah.
hardware, it's all, storage is all white boxes, software. It's not the big storage
I
arrays
know.
that
Yeah,
we
you
used to
have rooms and room full of all the storage, all the big disks and all that, hard disk and all that.
Exactly.
Huge. I know. I remember
So the
that.
technology's changed so fast and
Right.
over the years, and it continues, and it outpaces some of the stuff that we're trying to do.
So, Lynn, let me ask you that, as you mentioned that, there were not that many women at that time when you started this, and you were in sales basically, like basically sales, right? It was men's world, if I'm at that time. Now everything is changed, obviously. But what was the challenges that you faced, like, when you go in front of 10 men and now you are the only one there?
Right.
I mean, obviously, what did you think at that time, or how did you feel it?
So, Raj, I'll tell you a story that was
Yeah, please.
interesting.
I would love to
worked
hear that.
when I left DEC, right after I left NCR, I went to a company called Tektronix. I don't know if you remember Tektronix.
Yeah, I remember the Tektronix.
So they had direct view
Yeah.
storage tubes, the big raster screens,
Right.
that the monitors and
Right,
stuff.
right.
And they hired me, and
Okay.
it was all men.
Right.
All men in their sales force. It was
Right.
the first woman they ever took a chance on.
Right.
And after about 2 years working there, I was the number one rep of all these men, probably about 25 men in the organization. And I was very excited, did really well. And they had an opportunity to promote within to a manager. So of course I went after it because for 2 years in a row I was their number one rep.
Right, 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 right.
They came to me and said, Lynn, you're really good, but we have a gentleman that works for us that has a family and he really needs the job.
Wow.
Can you imagine
Wow.
them saying something like that
Wow,
today?
Wow. No.
And I was like, what? That's the first time I think it really ever hit me, not only being the first woman in that organization, but not being able to be promoted just because it was a man's world
Wow.
back then.
Right.
And I thought, should I leave? What should I do? I ended up leaving, but I was torn because I really liked the company. I liked what I was doing, but ultimately I knew that I wasn't gonna get anywhere there. But it was interesting when I gave my resignation. They came to me and they said, "We'll give you the same amount of money as we're giving this manager,
Right.
and you can be in sales and make more money on commissions." But they tried to keep me, and I just
Right.
said, no, I think I've learned my lesson. I'm not
Wow.
doing that.
Wow.
And then, of course, over the years, I've seen that,
Right.
and I've seen other women get stuck. I have friends. A bunch of us almost wrote a book one time, just how
Wow.
difficult it is being as we grew up in the technology field. Today, I believe it's a lot better.
Today is very different, but still
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, it's still not 100%, or still is a lot better than what it
a
used to
lot
be.
better.
Right. So, no, when you go to in front of a customer, obviously, the customer is also used to normally getting a man there. So you said you were the top salesperson over there, right? In, like within 2025, whatever. How did you manage the customer then?
It's surprising the customer was very accepting of
Oh, yeah?
a woman.
Okay.
They enjoyed having a conversation.
Okay.
You know why? I think because, and I won't make a stigma about this, but I
Right.
think I was more listening
Okay.
to them, and I really wanted to hear what they had to say, where I think a man went in and sold it a lot of times. And I just think they really appreciated it. I never sensed, Raj, of all my years selling or being in sales management or
Right.
running even
Right.
a large organization,
Right.
that I ever had an issue with a customer.
Oh, so
It was more internal
more internal than
Yeah.
a customer.
than a customer.
Wow. Yeah.
I never felt a problem with the customer.
So obviously, right now we know that it's a different world right now. That now everything is still accepted. Women are accepted everywhere now. They are all at the top
Exactly.
level, and everything is fine. But still, do you? I mean, I meet a lot of people, right? I meet a lot of people, and I still, talk to a lot of people, a lot of young, women like your daughter, my daughter, like that. I'm talking about.
Right.
They still feel that can I ask you something? Like for example, when they go out, let's say they have a startup company and they want to go get the funding. More man is supposed, young boys, man is supposed to get a funding than a woman. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, I would say even with my daughter, she's in. I told you in
Right.
more in the publicity area
Right.
and being in. So I would say with her too, she senses it. I
She
mean,
senses it?
Yeah, she's working in front of the camera.
Right.
In sports.
Right. Right.
And so,
right.
what is the first thing men think? Well, if you haven't played the sport,
Right.
how can you really talk about the sport,
Right, right.
And men just have this thing. I think in some industries, it's still behind.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think in the technology industry, I don't get that sense.
Right,
But I
okay.
believe there's probably certain industries, even on Wall Street. I have friends that are up there. It's
Right.
a tough environment for a woman on Wall Street. Still. So
yeah.
I think certain industries, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I think Wall Street is definitely, definitely different.
And I think for us, for a lot of women today, the whole STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math,
Right, right,
a lot of
right.
women are involved in that now.
Right,
And we're putting out by the universities, we're putting a lot more women out that are that have that skill set or have taken courses in engineering and math and science that helps them get jobs equal, maybe not equal in a lot of cases, but I think more at an advantage than they ever had before.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure everything will, changing is changing and will change. So let's hope that
Then there, like you said, there's some industries that are laggers, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
come around.
They'll come around, right? Yeah. Right. As the time goes, and it's this, the feeling should not be there. That's what I mean.
Right.
Like everybody should have equal rights and equal thing, and that's when the world is better, right, for everybody.
And I think for me in the IT
Yeah.
side, I
Yeah.
was one of the pioneers, right? So I
Right.
had the arrows in my back.
Right.
You
right.
know,
right,
and
right.
I think today hopefully that's changed because there's a lot more women and women in my generation that came before that has really helped the women today.
Oh, good. Well, people like you. I mean, if you really, I mean, you are a role model, right? So obviously, people expect you to help other people.
Absolutely.
And that's what I would hope that you're doing it.
Oh, I do.
You do, right?
I do.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I'm happy to hear that. Right. Yeah. So let me go. I mean, I'm still not done with this.
Okay, that's fine.
So what I'm saying is that when you mentioned that you were like, obviously when you reach at this level, there's always a politics goes on, right? Politics is a big player also, like between people and this and that. So you are more successful, in that also. I have to assume that.
You're right. Politics, whether you're man, woman,
Right,
whatever,
right,
it always
right.
plays a big part of it,
Right.
right? Who you know, what your
right,
connections
right,
are.
right.
It may not always be how successful you are, but there's other things that get you ahead. And
Right.
I've had to plow my way through in hoping not only that I'm doing the right things, but I keep ahead of the game. I'm well trained. I'm
Right.
educated. I constantly take training classes. I always feel I have to be one step ahead, right,
Right,
of my
right,
male counterpart.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and I have to be one sale ahead,
Yeah,
right? So I have
right,
to have my
right.
numbers have to be bigger, and my
Right.
success has to be bigger. I mean, I think women in this industry feel that way. I mean, a majority of us do.
Right. Right. Right.
And you can't have a male come back and say you can't get promoted or something when you have all the credentials, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's very difficult in this time to do
Right,
that.
Yeah. Right.
So the goal is to have all the credentials
Right.
and be successful.
Right. Yeah. So that applies also to minority-owned business, which we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
So I know, it's a similar story rather. We are a minority-owned business, and it's a similar story what you just mentioned about women and men versus the similar story, not same but similar.
Right.
But anyway, now let me go to Red Hat. When you got into Red Hat, right? When you were hired as Red Hat, you were hired at what level?
I was hired as vice president.
Oh, you
because
were
I
hired
had
as
already
vice
moved
president?
up to a VP role at Unisys
Okay.
and my previous companies.
Okay.
I had moved fairly fast in the industry
Okay.
after my situation with Tektronix when I went to digital, and I was recognized for my achievements,
Okay.
and so I did move ahead.
Okay, so you
So I
were hired
came
as a
as a
vice
VP,
president,
right, I
VP,
came as a
and
vice
you
president.
and you continued that way.
So it was interesting. Once I came here, and I
Right.
told you, Alex brought me on. At that time, that was 15 years ago, and
Right.
I'll never forget. People said, you're going to Red Hat? What is Red Hat? You know, is it the Red Hat Society? You know, the ladies that are older that wear their purple dresses and red hats?
Right.
I mean, that's how people thought of us. And the other thing too, we had just moved as a company from boxes inside like a Staples or a Best Buy where we had our agreements inside versus an enterprise company.
Wow.
So I got there just as they had gone public and became enterprise. So it's been about 15 years. And one of the things people said, how can you sell free? Isn't Linux free?
Right.
And it was, you know, and it was interesting back then, the model that we used to say, and we'll never say this today, but it was funny, we would say, okay, think about if you were at a restaurant and they offered you a glass of water or a bottle of water. What would you select? Bottle.
Right.
Exactly. So that's how Linux was. Do you want to take a chance of the bits that you have no idea what's part of, which is the water?
Right.
Or do you want to have a Red Hat Enterprise Linux bottled water that you know that it works with the OEM partners, that it has all the certifications, it's the NICS standards. In the state side, it has you know the certain certifications that you need. So which one would you select? And so people then thought, okay. And so Red Hat never had a new model. It didn't sell perpetual license. We never did that as a company. We sold the maintenance agreement, a service agreement. So if you take a look at what we did when we talked about perpetual license, we competed against the Suns and all that were selling perpetual license because it was a huge initial upfront cost to buy license.
For anybody.
Anybody, to buy the license, right? And then you had to maintain it every year.
Right.
So Red Hat said you get the bits free. That's for you. That's open source Linux. That's what that was what they built their product on.
Right.
And our job is to support the maintenance agreement.
Okay.
And the good thing about that is if you really like what you're doing with Linux and Red Hat, every year you'll renew that agreement.
Right.
So that was our philosophy, and that was how Red Hat was built.
So Red Hat went public or when you went there?
It was just before I went there. It was about a year and a half before I went there.
So selling the open source, they still were able to go public.
They were able to go public.
That means they had a good revenue at that time.
They had a good revenue at the time.
Right?
Yep.
That means was basically maintenance.
So when I went there, it was doing about 300 million.
Okay.
We were about maybe 500 billion. When we just sold to IBM, we were 3 billion.
Wow.
And we have over 10,000 employees.
Wow.
So in the course of 15 years, that's a huge growth.
So what is this like, you know, obviously maintenance is one thing, right? You know, the research and development is another thing. What are these 10,000 people? What do they do?
So if you take a look at Red Hat, we have built and we've done acquisitions over the last couple of years, or the last 15 years since I've been there.
Right.
So it started out as Linux, so the operating system. So, and at the time people goes, open source, is that secure? Right? And it wasn't until we built an operating system with the intelligence community, NSA, where they certified our Linux, and it became a secure environment, right? So people started saying, well, yeah, this is secure. It was almost going back to the network appliance story, where once it was secure on the network, right? Once you felt that open source was secure, and the good thing about open source, and we used to, and we still continue to tell customers, you have visibility to the code. You can look at what you see, right, with our bits. Where when you look at proprietary software, Amazon or Microsoft, you can't see it, right? So you don't know if there's a problem.
Right.
And clearly, and you have a community of millions of people out there that use open source, they're all looking at that code all the time. So you know if there's a problem.
Right.
So with Red Hat, we started out with Linux, and that was our foundation, and that's how we started. Then we started doing acquisitions. And when we acquire companies, they probably were more in the proprietary companies, but we open sourced them. So we made them available to the industry.
Okay, so you changed the model.
We changed the model for them. So our first company was JBoss. It was a middleware company, and we competed against WebSphere and companies like that, and we did really well with that. So, and that became agile development. You talk about software factories today, all that's migrated into what we're doing with middleware. Then we did an acquisition on a company called CloudForms, and we did cloud. And now we start building. You can see we're starting to build up the stack, right? We started buying. We bought a company called Gluster, which was our storage. It's a white box sitting on, very easy to use. Once again, very small, not a big appliance like a NetApp or an EMC.
Right.
So now we built all this around open source. So our stack is growing. Recently, about 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Ansible. So now we're in management and automation.
Wow.
And the nice thing about Ansible, it was already out there. A lot of companies were using it, and agencies. They were heavily using Ansible. So we open sourced it, and we took it to Ansible 2.0, where everybody can say, okay, now we can buy it, not just get free bits and run it.
Right.
Going back to the glass of water versus the bottle,
Right.
and ensure the integrity of Ansible, and we're going to buy it from Redhat.
Wow. So, when you convert these companies from proprietary to open source, right? I mean, people already have paid. They paid already.
Well, but then they need to, they've already,
But
no,
you just
they haven't.
maintenance.
Because it was a perpetual license,
Right.
they
Before
paid.
it was like, proprietary, right?
Right.
So obviously you have to pay first when you buy it.
But in that case, a lot of these companies weren't really huge out there. Like JBoss wasn't really big. It's gotten bigger over the years. So you were asking me, what do these 10,000 people do? So a lot of them, they write the code. They're part of the writing. We have a big sales organization, huge technology. Red Hat is not in the business of, we do have a consulting organization, but we look to our partners to provide all the consulting and solutions. The only thing we do in consulting is somebody really doesn't know Linux or doesn't know our Ansible or our cloud product. We'll put somebody out there to train the trainer and get them up to speed. Even on our cloud product, if you take a look at it, we have our everything's moving to containers, right?
Right.
We have our open container platform.
Right.
We're number 2 in the reason Red Hat's done so well with that, we're number 2 in the development on Kubernetes, right? Upstreaming our code to Kubernetes, where Google's number 1.
Right.
So we've seemed to always attach to the right horse on where technology was going. And I attribute that to Paul Cormier, who's the president of our engineering group, who's always seemed to be in the forefront of the way industry's going. Just like in cloud, 5 years ago, we decided to go to our hypercloud, right? And one of the things that's been very successful, because now we can work with Amazon, we can work with Azure, we can work with Linux. So we've been very successful there.
Good. So I mean, recently, you basically, Red Hat was acquired by IBM. So IBM had Xenix, long time ago, right? Which was competing Linux at that time, because I know that RS6000, IBM's RS6000, we used to maintain an OSC, Office of State Controller.
Okay.
So we are the one who did their payroll system, right? New York State payroll system.
Oh, wow.
So we were like, one of
using the Xenix.
Yeah, we did the PeopleSoft implementation, right? And RS6000 was the main, machine that they were like doing everything on it. Right. And we used to maintain that basically, right? So obviously now IBM is no longer doing Xenix or anything like that. So that's, what do they see? What did they see in Red Hat or Linux rather that they decided to buy?
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because IBM, when I came here 15 years ago, they were one of our biggest OEM partners. And they were early adopters of Linux, IBM.
Yeah? Oh, okay.
But over the course of time, they've gone on, they really haven't, we've kind of moved away from them. But in the very beginning, very big adopters of Linux, and we worked with them. Even to the point where they were heavily with our competitor, SUSE, right? On the high performance computing side, right?
Right.
But I think over the years, they just realized how strong Red Hat is. They've made a couple attempts at cloud environment. They went with their Bluemix and SoftLayer, and they tried to get into the cloud. It was not successful, right?
Yeah.
They looked at Red Hat. I mean, too bad they didn't buy us 15 years ago when we were 300 million, right? And they paid a premium. We were at $3 billion. And they paid $34 billion for Red Hat. Wow. So why would they do that? They did it because, let's face it, open source is the fastest growing technology.
Right.
is what we said earlier. There are communities and communities of people out there that write to open source,
Right.
and that use open source.
Right, right.
And if they're going to attach to some big company, software company, they're not going to do it with Amazon or Microsoft. But what can they take to build the foundation of some of the software they have? They have a great consulting arm.
Right.
That's their strength.
Right.
But they don't have the software or the technology to help put that all together.
Right.
And even though they're keeping Red Hat as a wholly owned subsidiary,
Right.
which is what we all wanted, because you're not buying IP from Red Hat, right? Like I said, we don't sell perpetual licenses.
Right, right,
So you're not
right,
buying
right.
our IP.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you think you're actually buying from Red Hat? You're buying the people that work there.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
buying our culture.
Right.
And that's what they bought. They go, what do these guys have over there? They're all happy. They're doing really well. They're real successful. We're growing 35% year over year. What are they doing? We need to attach to that. And so Ginny Rometty, who's their CEO, went to
Right.
Jim Whitehurst and
Right.
said, "I'm going to buy you." And she gave a number. And that was the number. And before we knew it, we were all part of IBM. It took us about 9 months
Right.
to actually for them to go through all the SEC and go through the process and acquire us. But so it's interesting. We're going through now what we call our synergy program,
Right.
where our sales teams are connecting with their sales teams
Right.
in our IT and talking about where we do have synergy. So, for example, in let's pick an account. Let's say it's a Department of Defense, Air
Right.
Force.
Yeah.
So their Air Force team has met with our Air Force team,
Okay.
and we've put together what programs are you going after? What programs are you going after? How can we work together? But and where we can work together, but where we can't, we'll keep separate.
Okay.
But where we can support one another, that's what the synergy teams are coming to conclusions on. But we'll stay apart, but where we can work together, we will.
But see, if I know IBM and you know IBM and everybody knows IBM, it's a big bull. It's a big bull, and they have muscles, and they will definitely, Red Bull is also big, but not as big as IBM, I guess.
Right.
So they would definitely show their power and muscle and all that. And as you said, that what is your culture, and let's say the culture doesn't match. I mean, it's a huge, too big thing, right? Too big. I always believe in that. In one house, probably you can have 15, 20, medium class people live there, but two rich people cannot live in the same house. So, I mean, do you see what I'm saying? It's a good thing that they're trying to do, but do you feel you already are doing it now? So what do you feel?
Raj, I'm glad you brought that up. So if
Yeah,
you really
yeah,
take a look
yeah,
at what's
yeah.
been told, and I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen
Right.
2-3 years down the road.
Right.
But they've always claimed they're going to keep us separate. They've never done that with any other company.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Jim is part of Ginny's team. Jim Whitehurst, our CEO.
Right. Okay.
He's supposedly the heir apparent to take over her job. Right.
Okay.
So early on, and they continue to say this, that if they paid $34 billion and moved us into IBM, which, like you said, they're the big bull.
Yeah.
How many people are going to buy open source Linux? How many people trust that we're going to be totally separate in our philosophy?
Exactly.
They're not going to, right?
Right.
So I think they know it. The industry, Wall Street, everybody knows it would be a big mistake to do it. And they've never, ever, even with Tivoli, with PwC, they brought them all in to the organization. This is the first time ever they've kept a company totally separate. And I really believe, at least in the near future, that we will always stay totally separate.
So if you are separate, what is the benefit to them? What do they learn from you?
So
like,
they'll still,
culture,
but I think they have access to all our software, right?
Right.
To
That is
understanding.
that's
what they need. They need access to their software. There's a big program out there. There's big programs out there that their software wasn't doing it. Right. There's big cloud programs out there. Are they going to go with Amazon or Microsoft? Probably not.
Probably
so
not,
what's the best way to go? Is pull in.
It's a strategic move for IBM.
It
I'm
is
not denying.
You're
I'm not
absolutely
denying
right.
that it's a strategic move. But my concern, what my concern is, right? Because it's like they saw your culture, they saw your 35% growth, they saw everything there, and they bought you over. But then they have their own culture. and which is kind of a tough culture, is as far as I know, because I've dealt with IBM also, and there's nothing against them anywhere, but everybody has a different, like culture, ego, whatever you call it, so you still have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, like I said, we don't have a crystal ball, but
yeah.
I would say the meetings I've been in,
Right, yeah.
and the seeing Ginny and Jim speak together and present to the public,
Right.
I do believe that the thought is that we will never be part of the organization as of right now.
As of right now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense in my mind. So, because you keep growing and they keep taking utilize your strength of whatever software that you have, right? I mean, that's
And for us, it's a good thing. We're really lean and nimble.
Right,
I mean,
right.
to be a $3 billion company and 10,000 employees, that's pretty. It's not super big,
Right.
And where people think Red Hat's super big,
Yeah.
so we don't have a lot of services, so we
Right,
could take
right.
advantage of that side of the house too. We try to we always use our partners first, but that would be another avenue. Now we'd have IBM GBS, their services side, that they're getting all trained on our software, so we have access to that information to those individuals.
No, I mean, that's definitely going to be a benefit in the future. Like when you said that, Air Force, you do what you do, what they do, and then maybe there's
Right.
some more synergy to, get some
We'll
more
see,
business.
yeah.
So yeah. But so far you're optimistic. You're happy the way it's going now. All the meetings that you go to, you feel happy when you come out of that.
I wouldn't say always happy, but yes, no, I believe that so far so good.
So far so good, right?
Right? Yes.
Okay, so we want to wish you good luck then.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me talk to you about, as you know that we are a minority-owned business. We are a small business. We are IT business, small business. We are a minority-owned business. And every major company, such as yours, Red Hat, has a program for women and minority-owned businesses, right? So I want to talk to you about that what is your commitment to the program that Red Hat has it now, and what tell us something about that, your program, rather.
So Jim Whitehurst, our CEO, put together a program. It's called Diversity and Inclusion, D&I, at Red Hat. And it's made up of the CEO, the CFO, and the head of HR for the company.
Okay.
And then we have actually organizations under that, and there's actually 6 organizations under it. There's one organization, it's called BUILD, Blacks United, Infrastructure and Diversity. We have our Pride Group. We actually have our military leadership. I'm very excited about the military leadership because we have what we call is TWI. It's training with industry. And with that, we are actually bringing in a soldier that is out in the field, and he'll be coming to Red Hat for 6 months. He starts the day after Labor Day, and he will be immersed in our technology and the things that we're doing, and we'll support him. And that soldier then will go back into the military, understanding about open source, Red Hat, and being trained. So I'm really excited about the TWI program. We also have Women in Leadership program, and with that, I just recently did a D&I, diversity inclusion support group for the women. So I lead the women in what we call as North America Public Sector. And I have, on a quarterly basis, training classes for them. I put together events that they can participate in. And some of those events is, so like I just did a D&I conference with them where I went through an entire slideshow that I was able to get from our HR group talking about women at Red Hat and their male counterparts. Taking a look at the pay scale. Taking a look at job titles. Job codes, where do they fit? And so we presented that to the women in North America Public Sector. Not only did I end there, but I ended up getting slides from a company called Deltec, where they went out and did a survey for me of women in government.
Okay.
And so we could see the same parallel of women working in government,
Right.
their counterparts, years of service, how they've what they have achieved. And so the women that work at Red Hat now, they can have a better understanding of the women that they're selling to or working with in the government.
Okay.
So we just put that plan together. Also at Red Hat, and so what I did afterwards on a quarterly basis, Red Hat, everything at Red Hat is Red Hat Open Systems, RHOS.
Right.
Red Hat Open Stack, RHOS. We have a lot of that. So I have a group with all the women at Red Hat. It's called RHOS, Red Hat Open Stilettos, where I invite all the women and I take them out once a quarter,
Okay.
and allows them to kind of just share with one another and help one another with any issues, problems they're having, and it's an open dialogue and a discussion. So we have that program set up,
Okay.
and we've had it for a couple years now.
Right, okay.
Then we have what we call our neurodiversity group. That's for anybody with autism or mental disability. So we have that. That's the fifth one. And then the sixth one is our Native and Indigenous group.
Okay.
So we have 6 categories that we have support infrastructure for our diversity and inclusion group. And Red Hat put all that together. We have our own group and committee that runs that with different committee members under those 6 categories.
And they are all part of the internal Red Hat team.
All part of the internal Red Hat team,
Right.
run by our
Run
CEO.
by CEO and right under CEO. Okay, that's good.
So it's a great program.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great program. I think you included everybody.
And then one thing I do, I recommend to all the women in Red Hat to join WIT, Women in Technology.
Right.
So there's a lot of associations out there that women can participate in. And so I look at it from a women perspective, but same thing on the military side, you know, where I was talking about military awareness. We have AFCEA, the Armed Forces Communication Electronic Association.
Right.
We recommend people go work, you know, be a part of that association. So there's an infrastructure outside of just Red Hat that can help you and help the people within Red Hat.
So that's a very good thing that all these programs are really helpful. Now let me ask you about the outside of the Red Hat now, right? We are a minority-owned firm, as I mentioned that, and we also do business as a minority-owned firm. And New York State law has, like it's 15A law, right? Which is kind of 15% minority, 15%
15 or
women,
20, yep.
and 6% service disabled, right? So that's New York State, but in federal also has mandated. Everybody,
yes,
every
federal
state has a
it.
mandate, right?
Your system integrators, your Lockheed, your they all have it too.
Right. So tell us about that program in Red Hat. That like companies like us, what how can we join or how can we do business with you guys?
Okay, so Red Hat, if you really look at Red Hat, 99% of our business goes through partners.
Okay.
We don't do anything direct unless we're forced by some unusual circumstance.
Okay.
And our partners are distributors, right? So you have Carasoft, you have Cynex,
Right.
you have DLT, right? You have Mergent.
Right.
And so we always have this 2-tier distribution. So we look at our distributors to drive a lot of these programs for us, along with ourselves. Right?
Okay.
So it's important for us that we look at small business to bring value add. Right now we have over 40,000 customers that are partners.
Okay.
40,000.
40,000.
40,000 partners.
Wow.
And if you really look at, and that's 8 languages.
Wow.
So we support 8 languages, so globally.
All across the world.
Yes.
You're talking about
all over the
40,000
world.
all across the world. Okay.
All across the world. Now, everybody says, what's important? Why are you looking at small business?
Right.
Because and we talked about this a little earlier, the industry's growing so fast, right? There is not one company that has a good understanding of of certain technologies.
Right.
Because technology is changing so fast.
Right,
Not only are
exactly.
companies changing, but technologies are changing.
Right,
I mean, if you said 4 years ago I'd be talking cybersecurity, I don't think we would. If you talked 6 years ago we talked cloud, we wouldn't. So there's a lot of small businesses that have that expertise, that saw it before anybody else, and some a lot more nimble.
Right.
And so they create value in their solutions and software.
Right.
And for us, as Red Hat, or I would think any company, would say, that's where I want to go. I want to find a partner that can bring value to the company, but bring value to your customer, right? And that's what we always look for in partners.
Partners. I'm talking about women and minority-owned businesses.
I'm talking about that too. I mean,
Right.
I would want women and minority-owned businesses. They're driving a lot of that, right? And we want them to come to us with a value proposition on what are some of the things they can do, what can they bring, and we're working with our partners. If you take a look, and when I say partners, women and minority small
Okay.
businesses, right?
Okay.
Our 3 top distributors,
Right.
2 of them graduated from the program,
Oh, okay.
from the small business program.
Wow.
And
Okay.
now they're our top 3 distributors, right?
Wow.
So it
okay.
just shows that companies can grow really fast selling open source and other technologies.
How do you become eligible to be a Red Hat partner or be a Red Hat minority business?
Okay. So one thing we look for is the recognition of open source as a brand, right? So appreciating Red Hat for what it is and understanding open source. I mean, open source we talked about earlier, there's communities and communities of open
Right.
source technology and people upstreaming their software to
Right.
that. So it's understanding the brand, right? It's being able to work with our distributors because I said we don't do anything direct. We
Right.
do everything
Through
through our
distribution. Right.
through distribution, right?
Right.
And then also getting to talk to the right people at Red Hat. I mean, up here in New York, we've got a whole team of people that are dedicated, wanting to work with small business, women-owned business companies. For example, you know from a BD side, you know Bob, right? He's supporting
Right.
Red Hat from that perspective. We've got a sales team. We have technology individuals, SA, system architects, emerging technology people. And they're all devoted up here to New York. And so they're always looking for new avenues of way to do business.
So if somebody wants to be a partner, they have to what? They have to go through what process?
So if they want to be a partner, just like any partner, whether it's a small business,
Right.
women-owned business, and so we have a portal.
Okay.
And you go online
Okay.
to our portal,
Right.
and you fill out an application, right,
Right,
to be
right.
part of Red Hat partner. In that portal, you look at terms and conditions.
Right.
You put a background on who you are, the company, you know, what your specialty is, what value do you bring to Red Hat, and then we promise this, within 3 days you'll know one way or the other. And even if it's there's questions, we'll come back with questions on how we can do that. And once you're a partner, then you're enabled to go to a lot of our, and I can talk about that, but you're enabled to have access to a lot of things that we support our partners with.
What are those things?
So
Let's
we have what we call a program. There's a couple programs we have. We call a program called Open.
Okay.
So Open Enablement.
Okay.
And Open Enablement allows our partners, no matter what size they are, all right, to be part of that program when you
Okay.
are part of the program. That gets 2 individuals. So there's 2 different things that we look at Red Hat: accreditations
Okay.
and certifications.
Okay.
So being part of that program, you can have as many accreditations as you want.
Okay.
You can go online, take web classes, online training. It also provides you all our go-to-market tools.
Right.
So you have white papers, you have webinars, you have total branding. We share in our branding together as well. So you have all these capabilities from Red Hat that enable our customers. It allows 2 people to go, you have multiple training across the board, but 2 people getting certified.
Okay.
One of the things that we also suggest is we have what we call our champion program. With in our partners, within the SIs, our partners, our distributors, we want to always choose 1 to 2 people that can be a champion. And that's a champion for us and also a champion in-house, such Raj is in your company. And that allows an individual to get all the certifications from us. We put $10,000 towards that for certifying a person inside the company. We also gives you tickets to our summit, which is our annual big show. We have it either in San Francisco or we have it in Boston. It goes back and forth. So that gives you that capability and functionality. There's all kinds of webinars. It allows the person to participate in that. So it's kind of our person that that works with the small business or system integrator that's in-house and is immersed, understanding Red Hat, that can deliver our support.
So basically, somebody has to be committed. Obviously, within
You have to be
you have to be
committed.
committed, right? And then you focus on it, and then you become partner. Is there any financial commitment needed for this?
Once again, our distributors
Yeah.
cover the financials, so you have to apply for the financial capability. You have to, they go through the requirements of that. That's not Red Hat. It goes through the distribution process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there is no upfront financial.
Oh, there is no upfront.
No
that's all
upfront
right.
financial.
Okay.
And it's funny, people go, well, open source,
Right.
you're free.
Right,
What margins or what kind of value do I get out of it?
Right,
But
right,
once again, the bits are free.
Right,
But the
right,
maintenance, there's
right.
huge maintenance on the, margin on that maintenance.
Right.
And the nice thing about that as a partner, when you register with Red Hat,
Right.
that maintenance is up for renewal every year.
Right. Every year. Right.
And we promise whoever brings us to the dance,
Right.
that renewal
It goes there.
stays with the same person, the company.
Right. Same. Yeah, I mean that's the right way. Anyway, that's the right way to do.
That I mean,
that's the right thing to do.
you live one life. You don't want to do
Absolutely.
anything that's
No,
not
no,
right,
I
right?
agree with
Everything is fair and above board.
It has to be fair.
And when you talk about open
Right.
source, we are transparent. That's what
Right.
open source is all about, right? And
right,
so
right,
it's
right.
all about openness and transparency as a company too, and to our partners, not only just internally.
Yeah. So let me come back to the different subject. Okay, when you're a pretty successful woman, and you've really done very well for yourself, and a lot of young women, young girls, young women, who are really can even though the time has changed, but they can still learn a lot from people like you. So I need, I want to ask you, what do you help these young women? If you help, how do you help them, and what do you do to help them?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, Raj, for asking that, because it's important to me, right?
Right.
Because I've been successful, like you said, and
Right.
it's always good, your line,
Pass it on.
to give back, right,
Right.
and pass it on.
Yeah.
Yes, no, every year I hire interns.
Okay.
We have a great intern program
Okay.
at Red Hat. And I always seem to hire a woman
Okay.
as my intern, right?
Okay,
And to bring her on and educate her on Red Hat.
Okay.
We have a great inside sales rep program. A lot of companies only want to hire people that are already established, right?
Right.
The one thing about Red Hat that I really appreciate, and I've helped start this program, where our inside sales reps come from right out of college.
Right.
And we really, if you take a look at our inside sales team, it's probably 50-50, men and women. It's very important to us.
Okay.
STEM is really important. Do you know how my boss, Arun Oberoi, Arun is always saying to me, Lynn, find me a woman. Find me a really good woman. I have this opening, and so the awareness. I think that's the critical piece.
Okay.
Is the awareness is
Right.
inside Red Hat, that it's really important that we do bring in different genders, different ethnicities. It's important for us as a company to do that, and it's important for me. Just
Right.
like I said, I run this Red Hat Open Stilettos.
Right.
I mean, the name is fun, but it's serious about what we want to do. We want to put women in the right roles. I want to promote women.
Right.
If you look at my organization, I would say probably almost 50%. It's probably 60-40, but almost 50% are women.
Wow. Okay.
And I've got some very strong women that have been very successful in the industry. And women, there's two types of women. There's women that don't want to help their peers, and there's women that really want to thrive on
Right.
helping the people that I feel like I didn't have a woman above me except for my mother that
Right.
kind of inspired me.
Right.
And it would be nice to inspire some young women that want to be in this industry.
So this is within Red Hat. I'm talking about anything you do out of Red Hat.
So Women in Technology, I'm part of Women in Technology.
Okay.
It's called WIT, and
Okay.
there's one in every state. There's one
Okay.
in a lot of counties,
Okay.
and that's part of it. I'm part of I'm on the board of AFCEA
Okay.
for the Department of Defense.
Okay.
We have what we call as young AFCEANs.
Okay.
So it's a lot of, and I suggest to all these women to be part of that. It's the under 30s
Okay.
that are just getting into selling to defense. But go join that organization. There's so many organizations and groups outside of there is to participate with. And you have to participate with them just to get to know the community, right? And once you know the community and you get to be a part of that community, that's when you can help a lot more. And then, of course, there's always, the charity things that we do, and it's important there to be part of a number of charity and giving back in that area, and I'm part of a number of areas there.
You do personally also?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you just mentioned that your mother was your role model, obviously. She is the one who really, you got inspiration from her. Tell us something about her, that how, when you were growing up.
Okay. My mother and I were very, very close, and it's unfortunate she passed away too. Both my parents passed away very early, but my mother always inspired me. I told you the opportunity that I had to get promoted, and they told me, no.
Right.
I went to my mother, in tears, and she was my inspiration to say, Lynn, you can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
And you can stay and suck it up, or you can take another job and thrive in another job. And I guarantee if you take another job, you look for another job, that women are really important to that organization. My mother started out, she didn't have an education.
Okay.
She did really well for herself just by raising 4 children, right? And she was a real loving mother. And then when all of a sudden, when we all grew up, we were like in high school, she started working in a company in her own business. And it was, actually, it was an ambulance service.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she worked with 2 doctors, so the 3 of them started this ambulance service.
Okay.
So I saw my mother outside of the home doing that. She worked for the government for a while, for a number of years. So I saw her just driving really hard to be successful in her own right. And she was from New York.
Oh,
so
wow.
she grew up in New York on 88th Street.
Wow,
and,
New York City.
But she was very successful in her own right. And the thing that was most awesome about my mom, she just felt like all of us could do anything we wanted to do. And I think when you have a parent that enables you to feel that way, you're bound to, be successessul.
Your genes are from her or your father? Like,
50-50.
selling gene. I'm talking about selling gene.
50-50.
50-50. Your father
Actually,
was
I would say
salesman,
my
or
mother
she was
a little more, because she was home with us a lot more, right? And my dad, being in the service, was overseas quite a bit.
Quite a bit, okay. So your mother was normally with you all the time.
All the time, right.
And so you got her more genes.
And she was the calmer of the 2. I did get some of my dad's toughness. Yeah.
Let me ask you something about your personal life now. Obviously you're running a huge organization, and you have a lot of responsibility on you, and you got people reporting to you, and you run, other out of Red Hat also a lot of different things, and you have all the meetings. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Yeah.
I love boating.
Okay.
And lobstering. So I like to go, and we have lots of lobster traps.
Okay.
And I have them out there to get lobsters, but I love boating. I actually, when I met my husband, he loved boating.
Okay.
And I wasn't a big boater till then. And we bought a boat, and it was a 42-footer.
Okay.
I water skied when I was a kid, but never really did anything in a big boat like that. And we decided to buy one. I said, if we buy this boat, I'm going to learn how to captain the boat.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I captain a 42-foot. I never took out a boat before, but I can do that boat by myself.
Wow.
I mean, I do need somebody to help me with the lines,
right,
but I don't need somebody to help me be the captain and drive the boat. So I do that for fun.
That's what you do for fun, boating,
I
right?
love boating, yeah.
Who is the boss at home?
Who would you think is the
Sorry, I asked you that question. I should never have asked, right?
Exactly. My husband would call me the Admiral.
Okay. Well, is he in military or?
No, he's not. But
right?
he just says, "Hey, you're kind of the leader of the family."
Well,
Yeah.
I can see that. So I didn't have to ask that question. What kind of food do you like? Like, I know you said lobster, but what else?
So
normally when you go to restaurant, what restaurant do you go?
So it's interesting. When I was working for NCR Corporation, I traveled around the globe, so I got to learn a lot about different foods and stuff. I'm really a Chinese, Asian food. I love Asian food. I mean, there's probably 3 times a week
Or 3
I'm
times a
eating
week?
Chinese.
okay.
I love it. All kinds. I love Thai food,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah. So that's what I eat the most of.
Is there anything else that you want to add to this program? Like to, we want to encourage like people here, like viewers, okay? Especially young women, we want to encourage them to do something on their own, like what you did, right? And how successful you are. So give us mantra, what do you call it? Like give something that what can they do to be successful, and if they are in business, entrepreneur, there are a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, so.
Right. Do you know Julie Garland? Judy Garland.
Judy,
I
right.
said Judy Garland.
Yeah.
She had the red slippers, for those of you that don't know.
Right,
But
right.
in Wizard of Oz. She said a quote one time. She said, be the first-rate person of yourself, then a second-rate person of somebody else. And I've always stuck with that. It's important to be who you are.
Right.
We all grow up with different backgrounds. We have different personalities. But be yourself in business. Don't try to be the man next door or the person over here. And I always find that that's the way to go. And I would say to any young woman coming up, you probably be the best thing for you to do with your education, with your background, with your family experience. Take all that as you. Inside here, it's all about you. And from that, be the first-rate person of yourself.
Very good, very good, very good advice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Raj, for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. You can watch our prior shows on YouTube at youtube.com/Infosys International. That's again youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you.